All right, here we are, halfway through the Advanced Workflows course, and I think it's time to actually do some creative work. Sound like a good idea? Pulling and organizing selects is the start to the creative road, whether you're the editor or just prepping shots as an assistant. It takes time and experience to learn what to quickly look for and how to pull it. What we're going to do now is look at that process. Learn the actions and the process now, and the creative taste will come with time and experience. Let's go. Regarding the overall process, all I have to say is that it varies based on the project. There it is again. It's all dependent on the project. I know you can't stand it. But scripted projects like films and shows are typically organized by scene numbers and takes. On the other hand, other types of projects like documentaries or branded content are a little more fluid in their organization strategies. Maybe they separate B-roll from the interviews and organize the footage by location, as one example. One way to separate things is to divvy up the footage by bins. And again, those bins are determined by the footage that you're working with. A lot of interviews break up each interview into its own bin inside of a main interviews bin. Do you have a lot of locations? Separate the footage into bins based on each location. You can probably see where I'm heading with this. Okay, so here we are back in our Scramble King project. We've already imported all of our clips, and there's even a little bit of organization that's been done, some bin organization that's been done for us. So the thing is, this bin organization doesn't tell me a lot. When I see things like cinematic shots and final shots and just interview actually tells me something. That doesn't tell me a lot here. So even if we double click in this and then go look and see what we're looking at, we can tell that, yeah, this is pretty footage, but we totally missed that there's a bunch of portrait shots in here. So what I want to do is break these bins into a better structure. So the first thing I'll do is come into footage and let's make a new bin. And I'm going to call it source, which just lets me know that these are the source bins. This is where all my source footage came from. Now, I know that my interview footage, this is pretty straightforward. So I'm going to take the interview and just drop it back into my footage folder. We don't need to mess with that one. Let's start with our cinematic shots. Double click it again, and it's going to pop open a new window. And in this window, we can kind of scrub through and see what these clips are. Now, just briefly looking at the thumbnails, I can tell that we've got a bunch of fighting clips. If I hover, I can even look and see what they're doing in these clips. Just hover and scrub. So this is a bunch of fighting. I think they call it rolling. But once we get here, these are portrait shots of Emilio, our main guy. So I'm going to go ahead and move him into his own bin in footage. We'll call this portraits. Grab these and click and drag. Done. Now this bin, I'm going to rename it and just call it rolling two-person. So that gives me a little bit more information. So that tells me that everything in this bin has these two guys rolling, not just a group of guys, but two guys specifically that are rolling. Remember, the more detailed you are with this, the easier it is to find things later. And now I'm going to grab the rolling two-person bin we just made and move it back into the footage bin. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the final gym shots. So let's come in here and see what we're working with. This looks like a much bigger bin, lots more going on. Okay, so in here, it looks like we have a bunch of rolling, but this looks like a bunch of team rolling. A bunch of coaching. I'm sure he's called sensei or something like that. I'm sorry, I'm very illiterate when it comes to the jiu-jitsu terminology. But anyways, I think I'm going to break this up into some rolling, maybe a team bin, and also maybe a coaching bin, because I want to keep those clips a little bit separate. So let's go here and make a new bin. And we'll call this rolling coaching. Okay, so let's find the coach. Anywhere that I see the coach, I'm just going to click and drag him into that bin. So he's doing a lot of this. Okay, great. What's he doing over here? Yes, more coaching there. Okay. Now we've got this. Yeah, this looks like a lot of training, and maybe that's the better way to go with this. Coaching and training. I think that's what we're going to do. So let's grab all of these until we get down to maybe here. I think that'll be good. Let's do that. We're going to grab all of these, and we're going to roll this into our rolling and coaching bin. And we're just going to call this coaching/training. Okay, and then this last bin, we've got Emilio entering the gym. You know, this isn't a portrait shot, but I'm gonna treat it like it is. So I'm gonna grab this and throw it into portraits. Okay, so final gym shots. Let's grab that. Okay, so final gym shots. Okay, moving on. So looking at Spring Hill. So let's open this guy up. Man, I cannot grab this. It's like my mouse doesn't work. Okay, oh, this is pretty straightforward. So this is a bunch of shots of the town itself. This is actually a very well-named bin. So let's just grab this and we'll move it into footage as well. Teaching. Now we've got 2 teaching bins in here that have been broken up into individual bins. I don't need multiple bins. I just prefer to keep them all together. So honestly, what I'm going to start doing, let's go ahead and just remove the cameras. I don't need to know that for what we're doing. So we'll grab all of this, move it into the teaching gimbal shot. Okay. And let's look at what's in this bin and keep doing what we've been doing. Okay, so this looks like a lot. This would be a lot more rolling with an Emilio focus. Okay. All right, so I might call this, we're going to rename this one. And we're going to call this Teaching Emilio, just so I know. And I'll leave the gimbal in there just so that we know that's the case. And let's look at this bin and do the same thing we did before. Okay, so this has a little bit more than just the teaching aspect to it. Okay, so let's look at this. I'm going to close, let's see, let's sort this by alphabetical. There we go. Okay. All right, so see, we've got some more stuff of kind of the town, of the dojo itself. So let's grab this, and we're going to throw this into the Spring Hill Shots bin. And I'm going to call this Spring Hill /dojo. Who does a backward slash? That's ridiculous. All right, dojo. There we go. Okay, and looking at this, this is more just kind of warming up. See, there's a lot of good stuff in here. Okay, then I'm going to make a new bin, and we're going to call this Emilio Training. Because really, that's more like what's going on in here. So he's getting these guys warmed up. Is this him teaching? What it looks like. Gotcha. Okay, so I'm actually going to undo that. We're going to leave this here. And I'm glad that I did that because this is all kind of a give and take. As you're scrubbing through this, remember, you're doing this pretty quickly because you're trying to do a quick organization. Now, as you dive into this project, you can continue to do it further and make it more refined. Since we're doing this, in less than 5 minutes, it feels like, this is going to be a little bit rough, and it's okay to go backwards if you need to. The point is you just need to get it sorted into something that you can search through when you're ready to edit. I feel pretty good about this. So let's go ahead and close that. Drop this into footage, and we can get rid of that source bin that we created. So a little bit more refined than where we started. All right, so string outs. String outs are an editor's secret weapon. Sequence string outs are long sequences with large amounts of footage. Think of taking an entire bin of B-roll and throwing it into one sequence. We do this so that we can easily scrub through all the footage at once, and then from there we can whittle down the clips into a more select version of the B-roll that we can scrub through quickly and use while we're editing. Now, we've already gone through and we've sorted our footage into bins. We're going to take this a step further and we're going to now dig into our bins and we're going to create string outs from all of this footage and pick out the very best moments so that when we start our edit, it's a lot easier to move on. So I'm going to click on the first clip, holding shift, I'm going to go down to the bottom and click on the last clip. And now you can right click and go to new sequence from clip. And it's going to create a new sequence from all of those clips. We stretch that out a little bit and we can look here. The next thing that I want to do is jump into my sequence settings, and we're going to make sure that our preview format is a QuickTime Apple ProRes 422. This is going to make it a lot easier on us as we scrub through this footage. Say okay, and we're good to go. Now starts the fun and somewhat tedious process. So we're going to start coming through here and quickly scrubbing through and finding key moments of things that we think could make good clips, good moments in our edit. And we'll move them up to another point on the timeline. So let's do that now. I'm going to start slow and then I'll speed up. So this is a good teaching moment here, and I'm going to actually pick it up from the beginning of the clip. And we'll probably just keep that whole thing. So now there's not a lot going on here. We're just seeing him talk. I'm really interested in seeing all of the action that this guy is doing. So this clip right here, I don't think I need. So we're just going to knock that out. And we're going to keep going. So he does some teaching and he comes back. And the goal of coming through here and making these string outs is to really thin down the amount of footage that we have to work with. So right here, this could be a good cutaway. So I'm going to hold on to this right up until about the camera moves and then get rid of it. And we'll come back here. Now again, we're just sitting on our knees. We're not doing much. Not a lot going on there. I'm going to get rid of the rest of that clip. That's fun. I'm not sure what he's doing there, but it could make for a good moment. So right when his head turns, I'm going to get rid of this, scrub through, and there we go. Great. Oh, this is a good clip. I love this walk up. He just looks strong and powerful here. You can tell he's a teacher. He's coaching these kids. It's a good moment. And then he kind of cuts out right about there. So it's not much, but as you can tell, as we go through and trim up these clips, we're going to create a lot more space. So we're going to trim down this 30-minute section into hopefully 10 minutes or so, maybe more, that we have to work with. But the less time that we have to look at, the easier it is to find clips that we need. And so we just continue this process. Now, let's say, so this clip right here is a pretty good one. I love how he walks toward the camera. He's doing some pointing. I'm going to actually move this clip up to the next video track. And the reason I do that is so when I zoom out and I quickly glance at this timeline, I can tell, oh, hey, I like this clip for some reason. This is called cherry picking, when you move clips or sections of clips up on a track. It just makes it easier to find the ones that you think are the best shots, the best of the best. Now, as we go through here, some things you want to look for are the motion of the people in the frame itself, as well as camera movement. It's very important to, get rid of these moments where the camera is kind of erratic and moving around. There's a good chance you're not going to use that. Not saying that you wouldn't ever use it. I'm just saying the majority of the time you don't need those erratic movements. So I'm going to trim those out so that we're just working with the most pristine parts of this footage. So this is just a little bit more of the same. I do like that this guy kind of pops into frame, but the camera really doesn't settle down. That's not bad. If we start there, let that go. It's actually a pretty good clip. He's a little out of focus, but I like how he comes into frame. That could be used in something. Get some good workouts. Good, good, good. It's all good. And you can tell because we've strung all of this out, it's really easy to quickly go through all of this footage without watching it in real time. So at this point, they get up. We don't need all of this kind of transition footage. The camera doesn't even know what to look at this point. This is good, good coaching footage. All right, so settle, let the camera settle. And this is great because we've got Emilio in the background, so we can see him working with the coach, see him focusing and learning. That's going to be important in the documentary. So I'm going to keep this whole clip up until it probably, I'm going to say the action is going to stop sometime soon. Or no, we just stop recording. So I'm actually going to bump this one up to the next video track because I like it. I think it's an important clip. Okay, so I'm going to pause here for just a second to tell you that I'm going to quickly go through the rest of this. I'm going to speed up the process so you don't have to watch the entire rest of this 20-minute sequence, 30-minute sequence in real time. But please stick around until the end so that we can circle back and discuss everything that's happened. Okay, so here we are. Let's zoom out on this timeline. And look, we've created a ton of gaps in here, so we've gotten rid of a lot of junk. And now, as I went through this, there were clips that maybe the camera was just shaky the whole time, they hit record, never really got anything. I tossed those clips. There's no reason to look at them. So I got rid of those. Something else, let's see, I'm gonna undo a couple of these last clips that I just did to show you something. So let's undo and get to right about there, I think. So like right here, there's some action going on, but let's be real. Nobody wants to stare at that when they're watching a video. So I know I'm not going to use that clip. Let's get rid of it. Okay. Anyway, so let's look at this. So now we've got a bunch of gaps. Now there's a couple of ways we can clean this up. We can either go to sequence and close gap, or what I've set my keyboard preferences to is shift and number pad minus. So when I do that, it closes up all the gaps and we reduced a 30-minute sequence down to about a 20-minute sequence. That's a lot easier to scrub through. And now we could obviously go through there and finesse that a lot more, but I feel good with what we have here. So we've gone through and created the string out of all of this coaching and training. So I'm going to go and rename my sequence, and I'm going to call this coaching/training selects. And then I'm going to move it into my working folder up here. So now I can easily grab these selects whenever I need them, or if I want to, I can open up this bin and still come back and look at all of these clips in a bin setting. Now, something I didn't do when we were going through that first set of string outs is turn on selection follows playhead through here on our sequence menu. This will let me just scrub through, and as I scrub, it'll automatically select the clip that I'm on top of. It's very helpful when we're just adding edits and deleting portions of a clip. Now, I'm going to go through the footage in the rest of these bins and create string outs for each of them. Feel free to jump off this video now. It's going to be more of what you just saw, but please, if you want to continue watching my process for how I go through and make selects, stick around and watch me go through everything. Just to give you a heads up though, I'm not going to be talking my way through this. I'm just going to be making selects. Okay, and that's that. So if you stuck with me through that whole process of pulling these selects, thank you. I hope you learned something there. You saw some of my process. In the end, all that we're really looking for is quality clips. We're looking for great movement from the camera, great action in the frame, any sound bites that might pop up, or a combination of all the above. All right, let's move on. To take string outs a little bit further, we can clean up the selected clips, add numbers to them, and then export them as a numbered string out. But why would we do this? We do this because producers and clients sometimes like to reference the cuts of B-roll that an editor is working with. And by numbering these string outs and giving it to somebody, they can give us their thoughts to the B-roll without having access to the actual editing project. There's two ways to tackle numbered string outs: the manual way and using a better editor numbering preset through After Effects. The manual way is tried and true, but it can be painstaking, especially if your sequence has hundreds of clips. It's worth learning how to do, though. To begin with, let's start with the manual process. I'm going to add a couple of tracks to my timeline and then grab the text tool, and up in the top left corner, I'm going to write 01. Okay, and drag that up here and stretch it out. Make sure that you have your magnet tool on so that we snap in the timeline. Okay, now what I want to do now is make sure I'm happy with my font choice. So we're at Proxima Nova Bold. I'm good with that. And I'm going to move this number right about till it's exactly in the top left corner. And now also check your justification. It's going to go on the left side so that as these numbers grow longer, it will continue to go towards the right side of the frame. Okay, and now all we have to do is copy and move this number for this entire sequence. It sounds like fun, right? Well, I promise you it's as much fun as it sounds like. So here we go. Something that makes this process go a little bit faster is if you turn on Selection Follows Playhead and then set your track target to the graphics track, to the number track that you're working on. Now as I move my playhead, it'll select the number that I'm on. That way I can come up here, double click, and just change the number. So as you can tell, this is a very tedious, very manual process. I'm not going to make you sit through the entire time of me doing this in real time. So let me go ahead and fast forward this, and when we get done, I'll show you the faster way to do this. Whew, okay, so we got it done. 54 clips, and it only took us about 5 or 6 minutes. So as you can see, that is a tedious process. Now, the next thing that makes this even worse is, let's say we don't like the way that the font looks. Let's say the client decides they want it to be in a different font, or we want to add a stroke or a background to it. Now we have to do that to every individual clip unless we start applying effects to these clips. Now, I'm not going to go through that process. You know what? As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and show you. If we wanted to add a drop shadow to all of these, now our best route would be to go up here and go to Window, say Effects. Where's my Effects panel at? There it is. And we're going to say Drop Shadow and put a drop shadow on this way rather than going through the actual text drop shadow, because then we can take drop shadow, do any adjustments we want to make, grab all of these clips and paste it to all of these clips. And now it all has the drop shadow. The next thing that you're probably going to want to do as you build out this manual numbered sequence, we're going to go ahead and turn off Selection Follows Playhead. And now it's normally nice when you make these exports to have a little bit of a gap in between each clip, because as you watch these, it can be a little jarring to go from that straight into this clip. So it can be nice to have even just half a second of black in between clips. So what I'm going to do is go to File, New, and make a black video. I'm great with that. Okay, and come here. So the best way to get this black video into our timeline is I'm going to make this just a 12 frame, back it up one, mark our out point. So we have 12 frames, half a second of black, and then jump back into our timeline. And now I'm going to move my track target and I'm going to put it right here. You know what? I'm actually going to drop it one frame above and put it right here. And so the way that we're going to do this is I'm going to position my hands on my keyboard so that I have the down key. So I'm using the Better Editor keyboard layout, and with that, I have my V key set to insert and my down key set to the next edit. So I'm going to start by positioning my cursor on the next edit and then hitting the V key, and it inserts a 12 frame gap. And I'm going to do that through the entire timeline. So watch closely. And there you go. Now we have black gaps through the entire timeline. Pretty easy. So with that done, let's get rid of these last two. And this is what we would use to export for our producer. Let's go ahead and park this over on top of a frame. And when we export it, our settings would pop up and we could use an H.264. And we can leave it as match source high bitrate, that's fine. And now the thing that I want to change though, is let's make this a little bit bigger so we can see it better. All right, drag this up. And what we can do is go to Effects, and I also want to add in a timecode overlay. So we'll do this. We can put some timecode at the bottom. Now you can position this wherever you want to. You can put it on the side, in the center. I'm just gonna leave mine centered up. I think the size is good. And sometimes producers even wanna see the file name on there. So if you wanna do that, you can add the name overlay. And we can move this, let's stick it right below our timecode. And we'll call this, let's say just 10, make it real small. All right, and that gives us a little bit of information that we can pass to our producer so that they can reference not only the select group that we're using, but the timecode or the clip number that we want. Now, I'm not gonna export this right now because I wanna show you a faster way to do this entire process. So let's reset. All right, so we've gone in reverse and we've cleaned up our sequence, no more numbers. What I'm about to show you is a workflow that I personally developed for quickly adding shot numbers to a large amount of clips. Now, this sequence that we have here was only about 50 clips. Imagine if you had hundreds of clips that you had to do. It could take you 30 minutes to an hour just to number all of these things. And then if you had to apply changes to those numbers, you would just have to redo everything all over again. You can see how that gets tedious. So this semi-automatic method is the best thing that I've got going for this particular workflow. Let's take a look. What I'm going to do now is add markers to the beginning of every clip in the sequence. So, like we did before, you can just do this real quickly by holding the M key and the down key on the keyboard and going M and back and forth. Okay. And now we're going to add our black video like we did before. It's already loaded up in the source monitor and we still have our 12 frame black clip. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to go ahead and add a new track. Then park my playhead and insert edit. Same thing as before. Okay, and let's add one at the end and we're good to go. So let's save this. And now I'm gonna hop over into After Effects. Now, if you're not familiar with After Effects, do not worry. This is a very simple workflow and I'm gonna walk you through the entire process step by step. The first thing that you need to do is go to your project window, right click and say Import File. Then you're gonna navigate to the project that you're working in inside of Premiere Pro. Say Import, and a new window will pop up. And in that window, After Effects is asking you what you want to import from that Premiere Pro project. And we're gonna select the Coaching and Training Select sequence. And now one item has been added into our After Effects project, and it is the sequence as it stands inside of Premiere Pro. All the edits, all the markers, all the gaps, everything as it sits. So click this, drag it on top of the new composition icon, and it's gonna make a brand new composition that has all of the markers that we added in Premiere Pro, which is very important. And it's gonna make the composition the correct frame rate as well as the correct length. It matches exactly what is inside of Premiere Pro. So the next thing you need to do is come up here to your type tool, click it, and click anywhere inside the frame and leave some text. Now, click the text layer and it's going to be left with empty text layer. That's okay. Jump over to your effects and presets and then grab the Better Editor shot number preset. When you do that, a shot number is automatically going to be applied into your After Effects comp. And it's reading this based off the markers that we have in the composition. So make sure that your type layer is above this layer. That's very important, above the layer that we pulled in from Premiere Pro. And then as we scrub through this, you'll see that the type updates after we pass each and every marker. Pretty awesome, right? So what's even better is we can move this around. This text layer is live. We can change it, we can scale it, we can move it where we want it to go. I can even change the font. If I come up to character, we can call this Arial Black. Great. I can change the color if I want it to be a different color. I don't really want it to be red, but just showing you that you can do that. I can even come in here, and if I don't like the square box around the number, I can turn it off. I can make it a round box. I can even get rid of that leading 0 that's in front of the 7. All of these things through this simple preset. Now, I'm going to turn that back on because I prefer that and I like the square edge. So we're going to leave it like that. Now, what do? How do we get this out of After Effects? Well, in your sequence, you can come up to Composition, Add to Render Queue. Now, once we do that, we can actually ship this over to Media Encoder so that we can convert this entire thing into an H.264. So it'll add that to Media Encoder. We've got H.264 selected, match source, high bitrate. We can even come in here and add timecode to it if we want to, or we can add the sequence name overlay. I'm just gonna leave the number up there for now. We'll say okay, and then we can export. Okay guys, coming up next in part 7, we're talking mixing frame rates. So grab your whisk and I'll see you there.